Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of This Week in Crypto Philanthropy, your weekly guide to crypto powered change. Nick Mikulewski, Senior Sales Manager here at The Giving Block, and joined again by my colleague Pietro Moran. Pietro, good to have you.
Good to be here, Nick. I am once again on the road. I feel like this has been a common theme for a lot of the recent episodes, but at Money 2020 in Amsterdam. So, seeing a lot of our European colleagues and companies building in the EU. Crypto space is hot over the pond or across the pond, and excited to see what's new.
Yeah, well, so much to talk about. And for those of you joining us, this is our season two finale, episode number 50. Can't believe we've already 50 episodes deep here. And I did a quick check. When we started this just a year ago, in May, Bitcoin hovering in the low 60s. The industry just crossing sort of that $3 trillion mark. And, here we are, still kind of in that same kind of like market size. You can only move, from 1 trillion to another so fast. But of course, Bitcoin itself having doubled. But yeah, just kind of thinking back on the last like 12 months, Pietro. I mean, any kind of thoughts? I mean, we've kind of come a long way.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I think we did our last season closer around the holidays, I remember, and it felt pretty surreal at the time. We had just kind of crossed the Rubicon of like people getting back into the comfort stage with, Bitcoin, crypto generally, especially in the institutional side. We'd been like talking about it since we started the show, but now it feels like we moved from, a little bit of trepidation, a little bit of wait and see, and now it feels like we're accelerating into the what's my strategy? How do I get into it? Companies, even in the payment sector, making, a huge emphasis on crypto, on stable coins. And, Bitcoin, was pretty close to all-time highs just a week ago, still is. It's pretty wild. It's like finally catching that momentum that I think the mind share keeps growing and growing. And again, we haven't seen at least in the time since we started the show, anyone just kind of pack it up and walk away. It feels like we kind of maybe got lucky starting a show about crypto philanthropy, and 50 episodes in, things are looking pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And there's a couple reports that came out. Wells Fargo just released an article today talking about how Bitcoin itself is sort of entering an institutional phase, and it kind of backs up the kinds of things that you've been seeing on the ground on the institutional side. And then also, I think crypto.com sent out another sort of analysis of the industry in general, with total crypto ownership now almost at 660 million people, which is pretty close to 1 in every 10 people on the planet. So you're right. We probably couldn't have picked a better time, and why we continue to see a lot of momentum here in the space. So I guess with that, want to just quickly run through what we're going to talk through today. If you've seen these episodes before, something very similar. We're gonna take a look at the markets. We'll talk about everything that we saw in season two, a quick recap. Want to talk about some donation highlights, and then of course ending with some industry news from Pietro's side. So I guess maybe carrying on a little bit, Pietro, with you being out in the field and what you're seeing on the institutional side, and looking at the markets, kind of seeing a little bit of a consolidation. But like I said, like we're pretty close to all time highs, even right now. So what are some of the things you're seeing?
Yeah, that's spot on. I think, the past couple of weeks and maybe even like 2 months, if you will, we saw, Bitcoin was kind of hovering in the 80s, 90s, and then slowly kind of turning back towards that 100K number. And then, last week we hit, I think it was 111,000 on Bitcoin, which, we're right there at that all-time high. And then right now we're at 104,000, nothing too crazy. The old adage in finance is sell in May and walk away, because everyone goes on vacation for the summer, and it's maybe not the most exciting part of the year or time of the year for financial assets across the board. But I will say the momentum in the industry, the enthusiasm isn't always reflected in the price. And there's something to be said for meeting the entrepreneurs, meeting the individuals, hearing their stories and seeing what they're building. And, those types of trends and, sort of that work being done doesn't manifest immediately into like $200,000 Bitcoin next week, but it gives all of the right inclinations, or like, leaves those breadcrumbs to say like, wow, all these big major companies, institutions are taking it seriously. it can only drive the industry forward. And so I look at, we're here in the beginning of June, 104,000 Bitcoin, 2,500 Ethereum. Seems to me like it's poised to have a very exciting, year, 2 years, just on the back of what I'm hearing from all the individuals out there. I mean, crypto conferences are super over, subscribed, well attended. People are getting involved, and they're getting involved in a very different way. Sort of to cap the point here, it's like a year ago, 2 years ago, you maybe met a lot of people from institutions that were sort of just defining their opinion or outlook on the industry. Now it's a question of they have a strategy. They're looking to accelerate on that strategy, find partnerships, build product. So you can see that difference. And while we may or may not, no crystal ball here for the summer, see another all-time high on Bitcoin, it does bode well for just the infrastructure component of the industry, which allows for folks to, do really exciting things.
Yeah, that's great. And, interesting because I think we're also surprisingly or not unsurprisingly for folks, seeing that play out in the nonprofit side as well. So, kind of taking sort of a look at what we covered in season two, had a lot of great organizations that, to your point, sort of mirroring those institutions that are now putting those plans into place. Here are some organizations that were doing just that. Some organizations that have been in the space for a while that are building on those plans, but then new entrants into the space that are putting those new crypto plans into place because of the new enthusiasm, the elevated markets, the capacity for people to continue to give. As we say all the time, the crypto community is so philanthropic in general. So these elevated prices are just making giving opportunities that much bigger and more apparent and more entrance into the space. So some really great conversations that we've had across season two. I can think of some favorite episodes. I mean, the identity theft resource center was fantastic. Our Blackbot Giving Fund episode was really great, especially for if you're looking for some of that like 101 type of how do I get started. But any kind of episodes that really stuck out to you, Pietro?
I mean, would reiterate like a huge thank you to all the guests that have been on. I've always had fun hearing those stories that aren't like, hey, here's the product I'm building. It's actually like, here is the way that crypto is actually powering some form of good and or like betterment of the world. So yeah, I mean, some of my favorites, Longevity Science Foundation was super fun just to hear maybe a differentiated take on like funding interesting research and how that's going. Our interview with Gemini, I mean, maybe selfishly, like, because I'm a crypto guy, like, it's really cool to hear more about what they're up to and like how they're supporting, sort of the back end infrastructure, maybe the people behind the scenes or the unsung heroes that are just enabling more of these use cases. So nonprofits and companies like the Giving Block and all of our partners can kind of have a seamless experience and focus on what we do best, sort of thing. That was a great one. And then, you know, I think it's always timely. Mental Health America came on during, Mental Health Awareness Month. We're always kind of, I think, highlighting what our core traditional themes, but maybe we have a twist for our crypto audience. I think that's always like a really fun thing for me. It's, kind of funny thinking about it. We haven't done like a traditional recap episode in so long, just because we've had an amazing roster of willing and eager guests to kind of tell their story. And so I think part of that has just been fun and, kind of educating myself and hearing from others that are doing really cool work.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So, as Pietro said, thank you to everybody on this list, and we've got a lot of great guests that are going to be coming up on season three. But check out some of these stories, especially given like we said, these are organizations that are doing some really innovative things in the philanthropy space in crypto. Check them out, reach out to them, and if you have an interest in potentially sharing some stories or wanting to be a guest on a future episode, we'll make sure to include some links in the show notes so that you can do that. And season three just around the corner. It'll really be here before we know it. And I guess to kind of dovetail into the kinds of impact that we're seeing, wanted to share just some highlights. And there's so, I mean, I couldn't possibly create one slide, let alone 50 of them. There's been so much, and like the market's been elevated, the new entrants in the space, the institutional side, the nonprofit side, donors showing up and doing some amazing work already. 2025 has been off to a blazing fast start. So a few things just to kind of recap. There's been a lot of donations that have been happening in the space, and to kind of you start right from the top. I mean, Ripple's $25 million donation to Donors Choose and Teach for America, really kind of setting the new bar for crypto philanthropy from a big institutional player. But yeah, I mean, I know we talked about this a little bit, Pietro, but yeah, pretty incredible to see such a big name in the crypto space make such a big stance.
I mean, I think it's really putting everyone on notice to say also that these companies are legitimate large enterprises that are maybe like in some people's minds always thought of as like small startups because crypto is kind of a frontier industry. I mean, $25 million donation, I think, is a real um, testament to one, the enthusiasm and generosity of the space. But two, I think it's also giving everybody kind of the rubric for what a CSR, corporate social responsibility campaign can look like if you are a crypto company. A lot of these founders maybe are first time founders or maybe didn't have a robust CSR programming in their history, in their past jobs. I think this is like a monumental event for the industry. It's so cool to see. I mean, $25 million goes a very long way. And yeah, it's like kind of the theme that we're seeing. It's like everybody's trying to capture this lightning in a bottle. Prices are one thing, impacts another, building is another, and they all, are related, but they move in different ways and at different speeds. So yeah, super, super thrilled. I saw the Ripple team actually just this past week in New York, and they seem to be kind of full steam ahead on product donations and just a broader kind of expansion of their footprint.
Yeah, that's fantastic, and we're seeing this kind of, these, to use this this pun, I guess, this ripple effect, kind of,
Hey,
permeating across, the giving ecosystem, and because I usually highlight a couple, sort of, recent, numbers, just kind of give a folks a sense of, where giving is. The crypto market still remain really elevated, and those mission-driven donors in crypto still are giving throughout the year. It's not just everything towards year end, but just looking at some of the numbers, a couple $100,000 just in crypto major gifts over the last week, 1.2 million over the last month. So still a really active space. And overall in 2025, you can see that number there in the middle. I mean, getting close to crossing 30 million, which doesn't include that 25 that we just talked about from Ripple. So if anybody's here listening and thinking about, what is sort of the scale of giving in the space, is it worth my time? Again, it's a pretty huge pool of generosity that is poised to continue to give. Still thinking this year it's going to be even bigger than before, and 2024 set some all time records. So, wanted to just kind of set the stage for folks in terms of what we've sort of seen this crypto giving do and what people are planning for the rest of 25. And if I had to sum it up, and especially if anybody is out there thinking, geez, no one's ever reached out to crypto or to ask if they could give crypto, the big kind of reason is that, like, when they look on your ways to give page, if a way they want to give is not a way that you say you can take things, it's perfectly understandable why those gifts might just move on past you without you even realizing. So the nonprofits, again, that are really prominently featuring this in their ways to give menu are seeing some of those transformational gifts, just like or what are baked in over the numbers of the last week and the last month. But they're really, again, energizing those existing donors. The majority of your crypto gifts are going to come from your existing donors, not you trying to spend new dollars to find some tech bros hanging out in the corners of the internet somewhere. They're plugging some of those grant holes, which is something that is on the minds of many of our organizations. And I encourage you to watch some of the earlier episodes where some organizations are talking about just how they've been able to do that. And of course, those organizations that are doing this are positioning themselves really well for the end of the year giving season. And we saw this play out in 2024. Those organizations that made sure their donors would bump into that crypto option all throughout the year were the ones that saw some pretty transformational gifts at year end, especially as some of the grant, um, you know, uh, funding started to be called into question. Some organizations got some transformational gifts that gave them, in some cases, multiple years of runway. Think about, how great that would be. So, um, we could stay on this slide for probably another hour. There's so many success stories. Can't wait to highlight a lot of the other organizations that are doing a lot of great things. Um, but maybe I guess shifting gears a little bit, Pietro, in terms of what you're seeing on the ground and some of the things that Shift4 is doing, we've kind of been accelerating ourselves too.
Yeah, I think, well, I'll maybe make one quick point on the other slide because it's super cool. I mean, if you had told me, when I started the Giving Block that we would be looking at 55-ish million in total donations almost at the turn of the year, halfway point being quite soon, I would have thought that would have been, lights out best full total calendar year numbers that we would be like looking at. So, I mean, to say that in the more historically say quieter months, makes me really excited, really bullish on the industry. So I'm like very, very keen to see how people just keep going, especially if prices remain this elevated and people stay as enthusiastic as they have been. So your point is spot on. Shift4 has not slowed down in terms of our crypto enthusiasm either. One of the really cool things we actually got to do this past week at a Stablecon conference, which is effectively highlighting the power of stablecoins, how they intersect with traditional payments, traditional finance, and how they're just better technology for money movement, um, and even for payments. So we were lucky enough to partner with Tao Group, who's been a long customer of Shift4, and piloted our first point of sale, all like crypto powered night out. So we hosted an event. Folks were able to purchase their drinks and or fare all in crypto. We leveraged USDC for this pilot, but it was such a great event. We had, you know, an absolute like insane canvas of payments companies, crypto enthusiasts, participants in the space that are building startups. Like everybody was so keen to see just like the real world application of this technology and to be able to pay for, a couple cocktails on a balcony, in New York City from your phone or from your wallet that you had, on your device and tap, just scanning a QR code, super seamless. All the feedback was just unbelievable. We're super thrilled to have brought that to market, and we're very excited to be rolling this out, over the summer to the broader Shift4 POS network, which, you know, in some small way is helping kind of the total adoption of crypto as a payment method. We have tens of thousands of merchants here in the US that are already, on our hardware able to do this. And the outpouring of support from our merchants has been, extremely humbling. And we're really excited to kind of just accelerate this trend because it's one of the coolest things. Now I can show my parents like, hey, this stuff is real. It's actually not just on my computer. You can use it to buy dinner. So for me, that's also going to be like you know I told you so 5 years 6 years in the making with my family. So I'm pumped about it.
And I wonder too, on the nonprofit side, I guess, looking further out, I mean, it would not surprise me in the least if we start seeing those nonprofits doing gala tables with pay with crypto. You're, buying things for the golf outing. And even like looking farther out, I know this has sort of started to take place in other, areas, but, for educational institutions, paying tuition in crypto and things like that. I bet we'll start to see more of this take shape, and wouldn't surprise me in the least if a pay with crypto type of feature starts getting baked into some of those traditional kind of like merchant type transactions that a nonprofit, large and small, may want to facilitate as well.
No, you're spot on. I think the applications are relatively like infinite because when you think about payments, like the total addressable market for payments is pretty much everything, right? Every time commerce is conducted, you have to move money between two parties or multiple parties. And so when you think about where crypto might make that easier or just might be a novelty feature for something that's already working but could be better, like we see this as a very, great place for us to commit our brand and to commit our time and energy because maybe I'll skip ahead to one of those points that you referenced earlier. We have almost 660 million people holding this asset class across the globe. You don't want to alienate that customer base or that donor base or that, purchaser base. I mean, pay with crypto has been, for purchases large and small. One of the things I didn't mention here, but we announced also as well, we did a collaboration with Property Markets Group, which is one of the largest developers of real estate, luxury apartments, and condos in the South Florida area, but they are global or rather national in the United States. And people are now able to buy houses or condos with crypto too. I mean, it's pretty diverse in the application set, which is super cool because I'm thinking to myself, like, you know, somebody has a really good year, they might make a donation, they might buy a condo, they might, go buy a table at one of the nightclubs or, you know, Tao, properties or any other of our merchants over time. So I'm just excited to see almost like this rebuilding of the, traditional payments architecture, but with crypto being one of the focal points, you know?
Yeah, and that's, I mean, that is super cool. I think we'll only start to see this, blend. Certainly 2025. I can't wait to see what is going to take shape. Even when we're doing the next recap, in the next year or so. Pretty incredible. Now, moving on to the next point, I was watching this game over the weekend, but yeah, explain what Paris Saint Germain has done with their Bitcoin strategy.
I almost didn't want to put this in the deck as an Italian because they beat some of our hometown heroes. But yeah, that was a tough game. But yeah, PSG is one of the largest football clubs in Europe. It's like you said, Paris Saint-Germain, super well known, very, very marquee name in the sports world, especially in Europe. They announced that they're going to be building a Bitcoin treasury, sort of strategy, if you will, and kind of adopting the kind of broader trend that we've been highlighting. And I could put the names down on this slide, but it would be 40 slides, of names of companies that are taking Bitcoin and saying, "Hey, we're going to hold this on our balance sheet." MicroStrategy is certainly the bellwether name that most people have heard of, but there's many more. I mean, even Steak and Shake is accepting Bitcoin payments, right? And like so many folks are saying, "Hey, we really like this asset class. Let's find a way to accumulate it or build a treasury kind of plan for it so we can hold some for the future, participate in this trend." And some folks are just going to the market, say outright, "We're going to buy $100 million of Bitcoin." Other folks are saying, "We'll accept Bitcoin payments and then we'll hold them on the balance sheet." So there's a lot of ways that these companies are participating. I think a name like PSG, which is super well regarded, has a huge retail audience, probably a lot of crypto holders are soccer fans, right? So there's a huge blend. They're just saying, "Hey, you know what? We're not going to miss this boat. We want to, jump on the ride." And I think one of the points I have here that comes next about the SEC dropping its lawsuit against Binance, like a lot of these companies, whether it's a PSG or somebody else that want to leverage you know, participating in crypto, I think are just that much more emboldened and or like feel more confident because the regulation is starting to come into view and the regulators are saying, "Okay, we're taking it seriously. We're actually going to have, sensible and sort of productive regulation that allows for builders to get involved." And now you're seeing everybody come out of the woodwork who's like, "That was a good idea. We just weren't certain." But now we're seeing all this confluence of events of like, "Oh wow, the exchanges are no longer kind of embroiled in this sort of legal kind of bumps in the road. Now we feel comfortable as maybe a retail brand. Crypto's not our pure identity, but no, we want to participate." And so you're going to see a lot more of this. And I think over the summer, there's a lot of expectation that regulation will be at least like put to paper in the U.S. And I think that's only going to make this kind of announcement more and more common. We'll probably have one every week, but I'd love to get your take on that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for the nonprofits that are or fundraisers who are you know, listening to us sort of at this, kind of stage in the episode, the way I kind of distill it is that, this kind of carries back to the fact that this asset class and this industry is maturing very strongly. And with public companies raising billions to go into the space, why really matters for the nonprofit sector is that where the institutional capital goes, wealth follows, and where wealth goes, giving follows. So, this is again just sort of reiterates that the organizations and nonprofits that are looking for new ways to diversify that funding, go to something new for donors that want to find more ways that they can provide impact, those major gifts coming from portfolios, not checking accounts. And so yeah, as we continue to sort of see the inclusion of Bitcoin and other crypto assets on, you know those institutional balance sheets and maybe even eating up some of the traditional bond market and being integrated into sort of that 60/40, stock to bond portfolio. This is exactly why we're seeing crypto accelerate in donor giving strategies in 2025.
Totally, couldn't agree more. I think the only thing I'll mention on top of that is that we're also getting this sort of not 0 to 1, but like kind of watershed moment in people's minds where they're saying to themselves, well, actually, this is an entire asset class that was somewhat underdeveloped and underappreciated. And then when you think of it, like we're talking about 660 million holders, which seems like an absolutely astounding number, right? But like, think about how many people in the United States own stocks, right? I think the numbers are like just north of 50%. So if we're talking about 1 in 10 globally of individuals who own crypto, in theory, there's still a lot of room to go. And I think institutions are finally waking up and saying, now that we have all the right rules and the foundational like building blocks in place from a regulatory infrastructure, custody, I mean, all these things that make sure they can have a quality offering, I think we're only going to see that acceleration. Um, and I think, there's also still some element of like being early to the space that I think a lot of brands are like, we were talking to our partners at Tal and they're like, oh my gosh, we're going to be one of the few nightclubs out there that's taking crypto for like bottle service or something. I mean, they think of that as like a real win because they can go out and cultivate new relationships with different types of customers or donors if you're a nonprofit, or institutional counterparties and like partners if you're, say, on that side of the industry. Um, I'll put a cap on the updates here, but the last one I think is super interesting. The company Circle, which many may have heard of, is the issuer of the stablecoin USDC, is has just filed for IPO, and one of those sort of like indicators that you may look for as to like the sign of a healthy market and ecosystem is like how many of these private companies are going public and going to the market, and from a position of success or strength. I think IPOs have been, at least in the last 5 6 years, a little bit on the slow side. The economy has been like kind of figuring out where it wants to be. Companies haven't wanted to take the risk of going public, maybe not having a great IPO and then kind of walking back. But Circle has been like extremely hot recently as a company, both from the like acquisition offer side of the house. I know our friends at Ripple had actually made a public bid for Circle, as well as some other companies. But the other option is to say, hey, let's IPO, let's have a stock that can be in anybody's portfolio. And there were rumors also circulating that BlackRock might buy 10% of the shares listed when the IPO happened. So it tells me, and as the payments guy here, that stablecoins are real. People are thinking about them from a 10, 50, 100 year perspective. It's like a totally new development for payments, for infrastructure, for finance. And people want to own the picks and shovels of that subset of the industry. So not clear when the IPO might happen. I've heard rumors of early June, maybe mid-June. You know, we'll see. I don't want to read the tea leaves too hard there, but would love to get some of your closing thoughts on it, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, USDC, the stablecoin, has been top three most donated crypto asset, not unsurprisingly, as people take traditional currency and move it into the digital space and are able to put that capital to use on the digital realm, and are donors in the crypto space finding new ways of driving impact for a ton of new charitable causes, charitable work that they don't want to see get disrupted by the recent turmoil in the nonprofit sector. You name it. We had even episodes that talk about nonprofits that are doing really innovative things with stable coins and infrastructure in needed geographies around the world, especially right after some kind of global conflict or natural disaster, and getting much needed financial resources into places where traditional currency has a lot of speed bumps or just physically cannot reach. So I am so excited for this, just because I think it'll bring stable coins into an ever increasing footprint. And so that'll translate again, as we saw across the payment side, but also across the giving side. Super excited for that. Um, And I guess maybe to close out with all the things that we couldn't fit into this deck, the Giving Block team has just put the finishing touches on a ton of new reports, documentation, data, tools, templates. They're hot off the press. So come to the Giving Block, check it out. We'll put all the relevant links in the show notes. We've got new statistics, donor personas, all kinds of stuff. So we just put those reports out. We'll make sure that again everything you need is easy to find, and I guess I'm really really excited for um, season three, which will be here before we know it. I know the summer is going to be a really interesting time just because of all the giving that we've seen happen and the things that we know is coming down the pike. So I think for those organizations out there who are in the crypto space, keep plugging away. If you're sort of on the sidelines and you want to know how to sort of get started and what are some of the things that you can do to tee up your organization for the year-end giving season, because as we all know, that planning is already starting. Right now, reach out to the Giving Block team if we can give you any resources. But I guess as we wind up season two here, Pietro, want to give you the closing thought.
Oh man. Well, I'll say this, I think if you think about TV shows, right? Like if you make it past 2 seasons, you're doing something right because the network hasn't shut you down. So I'm excited for that because I think that's just a vote of confidence from the internal side of things here. But yeah, I think you're spot on with that take, Nick. I mean, we have so many different things to be posting about, highlighting about. It just feels like a never ending kind of deluge of content. And like that makes this super fun. I look back on the last, 6 months of episodes, and I'm like kind of shocked that we managed to get it all done, in terms of guests, in terms of keeping up with the news, etc. So like I am very positive in terms of my outlook for where things are going. I wish I could kind of just record some of the conversations I'm having at these conferences and like just the energy because, if people are like 11 out of 10 on the space right now. And I think we're really well positioned both on the Giving Block side and the Shift for Crypto side to just be, you know, moving the needle, even if it's incremental in the grand scheme of things in the industry. And I'm seeing just so many, um, great opportunities for us to interact with clients, our partners, our donor network, and our nonprofit network that are, going to be bigger and better than we ever have. So I'm almost like, let's hurry up and wait and get to season three.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again to everybody who we featured in season two. If you are doing some really cool stuff, we want to hear from you. We want to share those those great examples of impact that you're doing and the kinds of things you're seeing in crypto philanthropy. So again, reach out to our team. And with that, we close out season two. Everybody, I think season three is going to be absolutely epic. Can't wait to see you there.